Here's your smart fact of the day. Let's assume that you have a bat and a ball and both of them together cost 1 rupee and 10 paise. And the bat costs 1 rupee more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? If your answer is 10 paise, then you've used system 1 of the system 1 and 2 written by Daniel Kahneman, in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, and you're wrong. Here, if you use system 2, you'll soon find that it's 5 paise, which is the answer, not 10 paise. Now, if you don't believe me, please do the hard work of actually trying to solve it like a mathematical problem. And if you do, you'll soon understand that, system 2 will come to your rescue and not system 1. Welcome to Smarter with Sid. And this episode, we are going to look at Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow and System 1 and 2 specifically, and find out if there are any practical applications of utilizing these two systems and seeing how we can take advantage of the beautiful way in which our brain is being constructed. Let's go. Now, in this case, even though system 1 gave us the wrong answer, that intuitive, quick answer that we give, basically that comes out of seeing the world around us and making quick and dirty observations and trying to, make sense of the world using that intuitive gut sort of reaction. It is not the right thing to say that system 1 is always wrong and system 2 is always right. By the way, system 2 is all about deliberate, rational, logical thinking, which comes from a different part of our brain, maybe more from the prefrontal cortex, not very intuitive, not very gut-driven. It requires the slow kind of thinking, while thinking fast is system 1, isn't it? So, frankly, in this 2011 book by Daniel Kahneman, very tough book to read. It's a large book, but it's got some gems. So if you do struggle through that book, you will understand that both systems are extremely required by all of us. See, if we try to use system 2, which is the logical, rational thing for each and everything that we do in life, then we would be wasting our time. Because a lot of times the decisions that we have to take have to be very quick, have to be very intuitive. Imagine yourself in the front of a bus speeding towards you in the middle of the road. You're not going to use system 2 thinking. You're going to use system 1 thinking. And most of life, most of our days are filled with system 1 thinking, and it serves us just fine. System 1 thinking requires us to be kind of relaxed cognitively. Now, what do I mean kind of relaxed cognitively? It means that you need to be chilled out and it needs to be pretty easy to think. Yeah. So home truths, rule of thumb, etc., come from that specific side of the human brain. On the other hand, system 2 is a little different. System 2 is less sensory input driven, and it is more through various kinds of data that you can read, statistics, mathematics, and most of you might be shuddering when I say this, but yeah, it requires grunt work. It requires you to sit down quietly in a corner, shut out all the other sort of sensory input and focus hard on the problem in front of you. Now, this system 2 does help you in wicked problems, which means that it helps you in solving problems which have a lot of complicated analysis that requires to be done, or maybe a lot of if-then analysis, or a lot of mini scenario buildings and all of that, right? So system 2 is that sort of work. Now, why do we use system 1 and system 2 the way we do? Well, we use them by default. Yeah, and we use them by default in a very natural way. A lot of times we actually understand intuitively that we don't really require system 2, which is the deep thinking, logical thinking part of it, to be involved in it at all. And this is where I think we probably get it right most of the times. But there are times when we need to stop and not have answers which are coming from system 1 for what is clearly a system 2 problem. For example, planning your financial investments, or planning the way in which you go about your education, or making sure that everything is crossed out before you embark on a long journey. So it requires system 2 thinking. So there are occasions which are studied in our lives which require system 2 thinking, but system 1 comes and tries to give answers. Now, why do we do that? Of course, it's the law of least effort that comes into play. What we are trying to do over here is try and save our brain from the energy required to be expended on something like the system 2 kind of thinking work requires. So it's very easy and tempting to say, okay, I'll go about it in the sense that if I recognize that if a task requires system 2 thinking, I will make sure that I don't come up with the wrong answers through system 1, and I'm happily on my way. That's easier said than done, because I suspect that the answer that we just got, or the answer which I just stated, also comes from system 1, which means that it's the easy and lazy answer. Because trust me, there are situations when we require system 1, which is the instinctive, gut oriented kind of thinking for important occasions. So let's take an important occasion like delivering a lecture, or communicating in a meeting, or making the right impression with a bunch of prospective clients. Now, in that situation, what you need to be is at ease, okay, relaxed, creative, and also with an ability to connect the dots. Now, this sort of thinking work has to be intuitive and has to be magical in a way, not logical. And that is going to directly come from system 1. If you try to overanalyze this, which is what system 2's problem actually is, you will end up coming with a solution that actually makes sense on paper, but it will not make sense when you present that thing to a group of people, especially if you're in that state of mind wherein you're all logical, rational, and very stubborn about the way in which there is only one solution and you've thought through it and the rest of it. I'm sure you know what I'm saying. There are so many people who come to a meeting who are not there physically in that meeting, reading the room and understanding how people are reacting around them, but they are stuck on their hobby horse, or they are stuck on their point of view because they believe that they've thought it through and they've given enough of system 2 time thinking. Even though they might not understand it as system 2 time thinking, they've given enough of their thought towards this, and therefore nobody else can be right and only they are. Now, this is the prime fallacy wherein we need to identify that, okay, a different kind of energy might be required in this room. So my suggestion to you would be, and this is the insight that we take away on this episode of Smarter with Sid, is that there will be important occasions, some which require system 1 and some which require system 2. System 1 requires the creative kind of thinking, the networking kind of thinking. And we need to identify those and consciously try to be relaxed, consciously try to be chilled out, consciously try to be connected to your way of thinking creatively, etc. And there will be occasions when you need to sit down and look at data and look at numbers and look at various rational solutions and do a lot of analysis and the rest of it. And you'll soon be able to identify those situations from this perspective rather than, is this important or is this not important? Right? And once you do that, you will be in a situation to understand that there are 2 kinds of energies that are required. Now, if I have to do it in a practical way, do it at a day-to-day basis, identify the aspects that actually help you to connect to system 1. So if you're best at being creative, the first thing when you wake up in the day or later on in the night, identify the times when you're more deeply connected with system 1. Or vice versa, identify the elements wherein you're most deeply connected with system 2. Identify the energies over there, and then identify the things that you need to accomplish in that day, and just kind of bifurcate them, saying, okay, I'll do this writing piece when I'm most creative, and that is in the morning, and that's when I'll be using system 1, and that's when I will choose not to overthink it. I think Ernest Hemingway, the great writer, said it best when he said, write drunk, edit sober. I suspect that he was talking of system 1 and system 2, because you need those different kinds of energies. Now, when you use these different kinds of energies, you will suddenly see a quantum improvement in the way in which your output is. It will not just be productive and efficient, but it will be effective and masterful and creative as well. I hope you like this episode of Smarter with Sid. I hope I have deconstructed system 1 and system 2 thinking for you. And hey, if you like this episode and like this podcast, do like and subscribe to whatever is coming your way. And do take a look at the earlier episodes as well. We've got over 240, close to 250. I think this is the 250th episode. Do enjoy this. And if you enjoy stuff like this, there's much more stuff on IVM podcasts offering to you wherever, IVM is, whether it's the app, the website, or any other place where you get your podcasts from. And hey, if you like me, I'm the traveling professor. Yeah, and you can follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram. Until next time then. Until next time.